Hi, it's John from Crafts by John UK. Today I'm going to show you how to make these beautiful paper flowers. Really simple stamping and colouring using heat emboss and also curling them to make them look slightly realistic and beautiful when they're then mounted onto a card. This is the actual project that I've used them on, and in the next video and the two that follow it I will show you the entire process from start to finish. If you're interested, stay watching. Okay, let's get started. So I've got here this Honeydew Crafts stamp set. This is called Cherry Blossom and it features 3 lovely clear large flowers and then some little leaves that you can use with it. So what I've done is I've set them all on an acrylic block. I'm using the large and, well, no, actually it's not, it's the medium and the small. There is a larger one on the block, and I've also got some leaves. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a piece of tracing paper. Now this is standard tracing paper from a WH Smith's pad that cost a few pound. This is my cheap alternate to vellum. You can achieve much similar effects using just basic tracing paper. So what we do, we take our stamping block, we take some Wow embossing pad, ultra slow drying. This is the clear embossing, basically, that you use when you're using embossing powder. So this is the Wow product. So it's slow drying, and basically the idea is you can stamp it, stick it, and then using some Wow opaque bright white regular powder, I'm going to actually create the template for the leaves and the flowers. So using the Wow embossing pad, gonna just stick that to the stamps, making sure you get good coverage. This is a different way of inking, so you definitely need to make sure you put plenty on. Take this and literally set it down onto your project and then give that a really good press. Don't do it quickly, leave it in place for a while. You want to make sure you get a really good impression and that everything gets fully covered in the emboss ink. Now take a scrap piece of paper. I've just got something that I've printed on the other side, and immediately peel that off. You can see, I don't know if you can just catch that in the light, but that has got the impression. And then I'm just going to cover it in my white embossing powder. Move it around so that any areas that didn't pick up the powder get covered. Tip it around a bit and then tap that off. And then you can now see that clearly we've got our 2 flowers and our 5 leaves. So that's fine. Put your embossing powder back in its little pot before you spill it, which I'm typically doing all over the place. I've actually got some on my mat there, you can see. And then heat your heat gun, basically. So I'm just using a Dovecraft heat tool, basically. It's got 2 different settings and you want to use it on your hottest. Now I typically start, when I'm doing this with white, I usually start on the reverse and then finish on the front. That way you don't overheat your embossing powder. So carefully pick this up. You don't want to touch it or anywhere near where the actual powder is. And then just start on the reverse. Wait till your gun is at temperature. You know it's hot already. Don't hold it too close either, because this is only tracing paper, remember. It's not cardstock. It's a lot thinner and you can burn it. So give it a good heat on the back. And then flip it over, and don't put it flat down. Leave it off the paper or off your mat, sorry. But then just give it a good heat on the front as well. If you're a bit sensitive to heat, maybe just use some tweezers or something to hold the paper. So make sure that that is all shiny, which I think it is. So we've now got our floral images on our tracing paper. Now this isn't as thick as vellum, it's not as nice as vellum, but it's just a really cheap solution. So what we're going to do now is just give that a blow. Let it cool just a little bit. We need this to be dry so that it's not sticky, because we're going to be working on the reverse of it. So I'll just leave that to dry for a second. What I've got here is I've got a couple of different colours in Distress Oxides. I've got a picked raspberry, which is a nice pink, and I've got a smoothie sponge that goes with that. And then I've got spice marmalade, which is an orange as well. And what we're going to do, we're going to colour the reverse of the flowers. When we do that, we can achieve this kind of effect. These are ones that I made earlier. It's a bit Blue Peter, I know, but what I will do is just get a piece of white card so that you can see what they look like against white. They're quite subtle. So on the back you can see the pink and the orange, but from the front, because you've got the white emboss, they look quite nice. And imagine they're going to look nice against white cardstock because you've got the white emboss powder and outline that kind of frames the image, and then you've got a nice fade of colour through the back. So what we now need to do is achieve that with our distress inks on the backs. So I'm going to show you obviously how we put the whole card together, and I'm doing it in stages so it's not one great big huge long video, but I'll show you how we complete our card in one of the other following videos. So I start with the pink. You want to put the pink in the middle. Now these smoothies have two ends, fat end for obviously working in large area, small end, small area. So make sure you turn it over. You don't want the shiny side, you want this side. So I just start by applying quite a lot of pink to the middle, and apologies if this is struggling to focus as I'm moving quite quickly, but basically all you want to do is just lay down a load of that pink in the middle of your project. Move away from the pink, move on to the orange. This is a fairly quick process. Because we're going to cut these out, you don't need to be precise about edging or anything. So start with orange around the edge. Don't worry about any kind of blending or anything at this stage, and actually cover over your pink with the orange. Remember, these are layers and that will look okay on the front. So do the same on the smaller one as well. Just laying down that orange. You want to get a deep amount of colour on there. And then close up your orange, go back in with your pink, and just make sure that you've got a bit more pink back in the middle. Because the distress inks stay quite juicy and wet, you'll find they'll naturally blend. You don't need to do more in the way of blending with this type of work. So just make sure you get a decent amount of both colours down. Now, when you look at that from the front, you can see you get the subtle pinkiness in the middle. Again, let me just grab a piece of white so you can see what I'm talking about. You get the pink in the middle and you get the orange fading out to the edges. So it actually works quite well. What I also want to do, I've got some leaves on here, you'll have noticed as well. So what we're going to do similarly is we're going to colour the green with the leaves. So I've got here peeled paint, and I'm just going to blob the green onto the leaves. These are quite small, they're quite funny to cut out, but they kind of work okay. And we're just going to pop some of these behind our flowers just to give them a little bit of realness in terms of leaves. So just blob some green down on there. So they are our three colours. And then I would get your heat tool, but only use the first setting. So use the gentle heat and just dry that from the back. Again, if you pick it up slightly, it does work easier because the heat can pass through the paper. But just give that a dry because at the moment it's quite wet. And then we're going to cut these out. So just give that a dry so that it's kind of touch dry. That's probably good enough. There we go, and flip it over. But every time you flip it over, you get to see how nice this all looks. So I'm just going to lay a piece of spare. In fact, that's not a very nice piece. I will just grab a clean piece of card, just so you can see stuff as we're doing it. Now, to cut these out, I'm using my Tim Holtz tonic scissors. These are the little teeny ones. I've got several pairs of scissors. I've got huge ones, and I've also got these teeny ones. I used to use large scissors for fussy cutting, but friends advised me to get some small ones, and I totally agree that these are way, way better. So the first thing I do is just cut around the shapes to get yourself a kind of cut down version of what you've stamped, but one that you can work on quite easily. Now, fussy cutting, I'm not the world's expert at this. My friend Denise is. But basically, what you do, you get your scissors in a good place and then you turn your project. You do not turn your scissors. So, turn your project around. This Honeydew Crafts set has got lovely thick edges. So, you've got plenty of room to kind of play with the border that you're cutting. So, just cut in. You can kind of cut up a little bit so that some of the petals actually kind of have the space between them, which is implied in the stamped image, but not actually maybe part of it. But basically just work your way around what you're cutting. Cutting slowly so that you don't kind of make any mistakes. Cutting down a little bit if you want. So just turn your project, gradually cut it. It's quite therapeutic. My friend Denise, I know she sits there with a tray on her lap of an evening, watching television and relaxing while she cuts stuff out. I must admit, I could never do that, but she is the master at this. So basically, you're just turning your project, working your way systematically around it. These are beautiful stamps. They're really well designed. They've got really good, nice edges that you can cut quite easily. So work your way around, and then gradually you will, before you know it, have cut one of the flowers out. There we go. So there's our first flower. So I'm holding that up quite high so you can see it. But when I put it down on the paper, you can actually see all that colour, which is lovely. So we're going to do the same for all our flowers and all our leaves. So I will continue with this video just showing you this, but we'll probably call it a day there. And this will be step 1 of 3. So again, just working my way around. And just following the line, you kind of get into a rhythm that you know the shape and the way that it moves. So after you've done the first one or 2, you kind of then work it out. Now, also the other thing to remember is that these are flowers. These are in nature. Nature doesn't do anything in straight lines or perfect circles. So if you make a slight mistake and you sort of go into one of the white lines a little bit more in one flower than you have the other, it's going to look absolutely fine because, you know, nature is nature. Nothing's perfectly square or round. So if the line's slightly thinner in one place, it really doesn't matter. And like I said as well, you can cut down if you want to. Just vary how it looks, how it feels. So once you get into this, you actually can motor through these. It used to take me forever to fussy cut, and I must admit I have got better over time. Being a man with big hands, it's not so easy. There we go, there's our second flower. And then obviously we're going to cut the leaves out as well. These are different because they're literally just a curve. So don't worry about any kind of splashes of embossed powder like I had on that one, because you're just going to cut the curve out and cut it away anyway. Now on this one, I wouldn't normally do this, but I'm kind of cutting on the negative. I can't actually see what I'm cutting, but I'm kind of confident enough around the shape that I can just pretty much follow the line by eye. There we go. Let me just flip that over because that is the wrong way up. There we go. So that's one. And you need a few of these because we're going to pop a few of these behind the flowers using a clear glue so that it just kind of grounds them in nature. So you've got flower blooms and you've also got some nice leaves behind. Again, these don't have to be that precise. And you can't see too much of the green on these because the white lines are quite prominent, but you will see enough that they kind of add to the overall effect. This small one is quite tricky to cut because there's not an awful lot to grab hold of, but just obviously follow the lines as best you can. When I work with these, I probably will work with them with a pair of tweezers. There we go, so there's 3 little leaves and then another 2 here. So let's just zoom along. There are other ways of colouring these flowers and leaves from behind. You can do it with pencils, you can do it with pens, I chose to do it with Distress Oxides because obviously that's super quick with a smoothie or a sponge. But you can colour this tracing paper from behind with a multitude of different mediums. And this tracing paper is a lovely cheaper option than vellum, or if you don't have vellum. So I tend to keep a pad of this close by and get it in most stationers. And it's literally a few pounds. Vellum is quite expensive. Obviously, it is nicer, it's thicker, it's better quality, but I think the tracing paper is a perfectly good alternate. You need to just be a little bit careful though, because the tracing paper is a lot thinner, so it can tear quite easily. But if you're delicate and a little bit careful when you're working with it, that's absolutely fine. Okay, so we've got our 2 flowers, different sizes, and our leaves. Now, one tip, you'll see when you lay these down, because they're tracing paper, they start to curl naturally. What we want to do is we want to give it a bit of a curl. So I've got here, this is a Lavinia stencil brush, but you can use anything. I just want something with a round end. So basically what I'm going to do is put it in the palm of my hand, and I'm just going to twizzle it around. Now you'll see I'm twizzling it on each leaf. Don't worry if you see that you're putting in slight creases. This is what we want to do. We want to kind of distress it a little bit. Turn it over and do the same on the front. So I'm kind of turning it, I'm twisting it, I'm kind of moving it in different directions. And what you'll see when I put that down, that now looks slightly different than that. It's got more variations. Always do the back first, put it in the palm of your hand, make your hand into almost a little cup so that you can kind of press it into the natural shape of your hand. Flip it over and then reverse it so that the leaves kind of curl up towards the edges and it just looks more like an actual flower. There we go. And what you'll find is that stops it just curling unnaturally, because it's kind of then curling the way that you've told it to. And what you can do, there's various things you can do here. You could mount, for instance, if you wanted, the smaller head inside the larger. So you could do that and make it like a double flower. You could also put a bead or a bradawl in the middle to hold it together and make it, you know, a very detailed kind of multi-layered. What we're going to do is we're going to put some flowers, some petals. I don't mean petals, I mean leaves. Put some leaves behind it. But this is the kind of effect we're going for. So you can see I've stamped it in white. I've coloured the backs using my Distress Oxides really quickly, dried it. I've flipped it over, and then we've used just a rounded object to kind of shape the back, basically. And that's as far as I'm going to go today. I will be back with the second stage where we're going to make our background and our layer, and then the third stage will be putting the whole thing together. So breaking this down into parts. I know people had asked me to show how to make paper flowers, and there you go. There's a way of doing it. You can see we've quite quickly and simply got a couple of really pretty little flowers that are going to make a nice overall card. I will be back with stage 2 later.